There's a problem in this country, and it's white nationalism. It affects us and it hurts us, and this needs to be stopped.
Nationalize the fossil fuel industry to phase them out. We propose to do this by means of a government buyout at fair value.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. On May 12th, a fire-starting device was thrown into the Diyanet Mosque in New Haven, Connecticut, causing major damage. There's been no arrests. The community is fearful that this is a hate crime. There was a demonstration of support for the mosque and the rights of Muslims. 300 to 400 attended.
These attacks, ignoring values such as conscience, law, humanity rights, and sense of justice, are indicator of Islamophobia that reach the level of anti-Islam. I strongly condemn such provocative actions to hurt all Muslims and to break the world peace, and invite all conscientious people to mobilize against anti-Islamic and inhuman events.
Places of worship are under attack and will continue, unfortunately, to be under attack. At times, we have to lock our doors at places of worship. When a terrorist act occurs or when other officials speak hatefully, it sparks more hate, and it affects diverse communities like this. There's a problem in this country, and it's white nationalism. It affects us and it hurts us, and this needs to be stopped. Also, some of the media sources are to blame. Hollywood and many other groups like Act of America and some undercovers amongst our ranks. Our pain is your pain. We must continue to overcome and defeat hate. When we have events like sharing Ramadan, or in this blessed month of Ramadan, or events for our Christian or Jewish brothers, come together. This is how we will defeat hate. No one is the greatest judge but God himself.
Assalamu alaikum, good evening everyone. My name is Umar Bajwa. I have the privilege of serving as the Muslim chaplain at Yale. I want to say two things really quickly tonight that I want to share with you. The first is about the power of planting seeds. I'm a chaplain. My mentor, Chaplain Sharon Kugler, is here, and it's something that she's taught me and spent the last 11 years teaching me. And I want to share a personal story with you about the power of planting seeds. I grew up in upstate New York, in Binghamton, New York, and about 25 years ago, there was an extraordinary man that came into my life. His name was Qasim Hoja. He was a Turkish imam that came to our small town in upstate, and he spent time through my teenage years, through my college years, into my graduate years, really spending time molding my character. And I was a tough student in the sense that I needed a lot of molding. And so, 20 years later, Imam Qasim migrated back to Turkey, and he lives and teaches in Turkey. 3 years ago, he introduced one of his other students to me. His name is Hafiz Ahmed Tahir, who's here tonight with his beautiful family. Hafiz Ahmed is a graduate student at Yale University in Islamic Studies. He also happens to be a very active member of this mosque, of the Diyanet Mosque. 3 years ago, Hafiz Ahmed started inviting me here to teach classes in English. And so that second part of the story is, last Thursday, I was here before Taraweeh prayer, after iftar. I taught a class in English, a little halaqa, went home. On Saturday night, I came with my family, with my friends. We had a wonderful iftar here in the masjid. Sunday, you know what happened. Sunday, we heard the horrific news around 4 or 5 p.m. of the fire that broke out. By Monday afternoon, the authorities had investigated and seen that it was an intentional arson attack. And by Monday evening, 7 p.m., my best friend who lives down the street from me and my wife and his wife, they said, we need to do something. So what can we do in the face of such, intentional hate and violence? And so we organized a Launch Good fundraising online campaign. And this is the last thing I'm going to say. In the last 72 hours, so from Monday evening until now, we've reached almost $150,000 that have been raised. All of the money that's been raised from around the world is going towards the rebuilding of this mosque. And so that's all I want to share with you, is the power of planting seeds.
I look at this mosque behind me, and my heart is broken that I can't enter it. But I am reminded of a verse in our Hebrew text, in the book of Exodus, where God commands that we should build a sanctuary that God may, and then the Hebrew word is b'tocham. It is usually translated that I may dwell among you. But another interpreter of that verse said that actually b'tocham can also be that I may dwell in you. And so I'm reminded as I stand before this beautiful masjid with the great sadness that I am unable to enter it, as I have in so many other mosques. But I'm reminded that that mosque today is in each one of us. We are the mosque. We are the house that God is visiting. And that gives me hope, that when I look around and I see all of us who have come together for this very sad but important moment in the life of our community, that we stand together.
I'm a Turkish-American Muslim whose heart aches at the events that unfolded last Sunday. See, before this mosque was relocated to its current location, it was housed in a building not too far away from here. Some of my earliest memories were in that building. I attended weekend classes there. I went to Friday prayers there. My parents got married there. I grew up there. And that's why Sunday's events hit close to home for me. I want to read a post that I wrote on Facebook immediately following the fire to you guys. And I quote, "As many of you heard, on Sunday, the Turkish-American Diyanet Mosque in New Haven was intentionally set on fire. Aside from the obvious, what makes this situation horrible is that it occurred during the holy month of Ramadan, where Muslims across the world abstain from food and water from dawn till dusk in an effort to sympathize, in an effort to experience austerity and sympathize with those in poverty. I wish I could say I was surprised by what took place on Sunday, but I'm not. Muslim Americans have been marginalized in the United States for as long as I can remember. Even this very mosque, Diyanet, was forced by the city of New Haven to cut down its beautiful minarets right here because it didn't abide by some outdated zoning laws. Additionally, the city of New Haven does not recognize a single Muslim holiday. I'll have you know we recognize Christian holidays. I'll have you know we recognize Jewish holidays. I'll have you know we recognize Latinx holidays, but we don't recognize a single Muslim holiday. While I am not arguing that a minaret or a holiday would have stopped Sunday's fire from occurring, I am highlighting our cities and our leaders' persistent indifference towards Muslim lives in America.
Trump's ultra-militaristic national security advisor, John Bolton, was slated to speak at the Coast Guard Academy graduation in New London, Connecticut. A number of groups protested. Here's a bit from their press release calling on Academy Superintendent Rendon to disinvite Bolton. Bolton is notorious for demanding military solutions to international disputes. He ruined the Korean talks by advising the president to take an all-or-nothing approach. He stoked interference in Venezuelan affairs and helped incite the attempted coup. In 2015, he wrote the infamous New York Times op-ed entitled "To Stop Iran's Bomb, bomb Iran. These are the groups that sent the release. Unfortunately, Bolton was not disinvited. In his speech, he didn't talk about Iran directly, but he did say this: the United States is an Arctic nation with enduring national interests in that region. And he said, we need to reserve Arctic governance for Arctic nations. So he's declaring that the US, Canada, and Russia own the top of the world and setting the stage for a new battlefield. You may remember this man, Ibrahim Abu Thuraya. His legs were amputated years ago after an Israeli bombing. Yet he worked and participated in various Gaza protests. He was shot dead in December 2017. This week, the Israeli army closed its investigation, saying there was no evidence he was shot by direct army fire. Almost every murder of Palestinians is excused one way or another. Of course, the army may be right. Perhaps he died of old age. In Times Square, ultra-right Zionists held a hate fest against members of Congress, Ocasio-Cortez, Tlaib, and especially Ilhan Omar. Here's a highlight.
And now Representative Omar is on the House Foreign Relations Committee with access to classified data. No one who finds Al-Qaeda and Hezbollah worthy of knee-slapping laughs belongs in Congress, much less on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. That is no place for her. Congresswoman Omar should be kicked off of the House Foreign Affairs Committee immediately.
She's gonna burn in hell.
Kick her off.
There were counter-protesters organized by CODEPINK.
These people across the street, every once in a while they'll talk of love and peace. They'll mention those words. They're the most hateful group of people I have ever laid my eyes on. If they were allowed to do what they wanted to do, they would attack us physically.
Right. I know very well. We're here to stand up for Ilhan Omar, one of our greatest allies in Congress.
They were met by these fascists.
Very racist and aggressive. I remember them hitting our people. Oh, that's very nice.
Kahani deserved what he got. 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 Kahani deserved what he got.
Note they were shouting JDL and carrying the yellow flag of the JDL, Jewish Defense League, an organization so violent and vile that it's outlawed in both the US and Israel. In our last program, we had a few still pictures of the protests in Brazil against the awful Bolsonaro government. Here's a bit of the chanting that went on.
Bolsonaro quer deixar a gente se esconder, a gente se estudar. Se o povo se unir, Bolsonaro vai cair, 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 Bolsonaro.
A week ago, scores of people in Bridgeport, Connecticut held an honorary graduation celebration for Jayson Negron, a 15-year-old whom a Bridgeport policeman shot to death in 2017. When people walked in the street in protest, a dozen or so were arrested. To remind you what this is all about, we go back to the day the state's attorney said that she would not prosecute the policemen involved.
The state's attorney has completely exonerated James Boulay. But we are going to keep fighting this, and everyone in Connecticut can and should stand with us. We demand that the 6 members of the Criminal Justice Commission of Connecticut reopen the investigation immediately. We're naming you Andrew McDonald, Juliet Crawford, Mary Melvin, Eric George, Moy Ogilvy, Eric Russell. Reopen this investigation. This investigation by the state police, overseen by Maureen Platt, by Chief State's Attorney Kevin Kane, this has been a sham from the start. They know it, and we know it. They never wanted to hold this officer accountable. They were never looking for justice. We charge the state's attorney and the chief state's attorney with misconduct. The state's attorney has been colluding with the Bridgeport Police Department from the very beginning. The state police, Mayor Joe Ganim of Bridgeport, the state's attorney, they all could have released the video. They had the discretion to at any point, and they did not. Why? Because they have been protecting the police from the start. We know the police can't investigate the police. We know the state police never really investigated this crime. They took the police story from start to finish without interviewing bystanders and people from the community who saw what happened that day. What they saw contradicted police accounts in every way. Maureen Platt, you took the police story from the start. Even when the Bridgeport police lied again and again about what happened to Jayson. Chief A.J. Perez actively tried to cover up what happened to Jayson. He said Jayson died on the spot, shot in the head. But video showed Jayson was alive, moving. He died after they refused to call emergency medical services. He died there in the street. That was only one of their lies. And Kevin Kane, Chief State's Attorney, you've been working quietly behind the scenes to obstruct justice. We've always known where you stood. He has been a part of this collusion. Last year, 2 months after Jayson was killed, he wrote an article, "Emboldened Juveniles Endanger the Public." He called for increasing incarceration and criminal sanctions on our youth. He never wanted to protect Jayson or see through justice. The blatant racism of his ideas are sickening, yet this man is our Chief State's Attorney, the Chief State's Attorney of this state. We, the community, charge all of this as collusion, as misconduct. This decision is sickening. This is a sick system, and we have to keep fighting it. And all of you can be a part of this work. We need a movement together to end police terror in Connecticut, once and for all. It means we need to limit the power of the police, not give them more funding and technology to kill. We need to limit their power with community review boards with real subpoena power. We need to watch the police and challenge the stories they tell about themselves. This is a brutal institution. Violence is everything that they do. Look around at them right here. We are a grieving community standing here to resist injustice. They are armed out there. What do they want to do to us? Stop believing their stories about community violence. Stop believing the stories that they tell about protecting the community. We need to start naming their violence. If we ever want these killings to stop, we need to start telling the truth about the police. And that includes the press. We need to stop treating the police like they're gods. They are people. They are people who are given too much power. They are given the power to kill with total impunity. To end police terror, we need to target people like Maureen Platt and Kevin Kane and Governor Malloy, who sit in their offices and feel nothing and maintain a system that protects the police. Why? Because the police serve them. The police serve power, not communities, not the people. We need to connect the police terror happening in our streets with the terror happening in these buildings.
And young people in New York City walking for freedom, freedom for women to be able to make or not make the wrenching decision to have an abortion. Several weeks ago, there was a conference in Bridgeport, Connecticut, about the climate emergency. Economic historian Richard Smith was the keynote, and he talked about some bold proposals that have come out of the effort system change, not climate change. There was a lot of echo in the room, so we'll subtitle some of his comments.
Instead, we propose a strategy of rationally planned, democratically managed wind down and phase out of fossil fuels in a coordinated transition to renewable energy that avoids economic collapse and guarantees reemployment for those affected workers. Our strategy in the United States is based on the following four-point plan. First, declare, most of this is in the DSA's position paper. Declare a state of emergency to suppress fossil fuel use, ban all new extraction, ration gasoline, ban production of new fossil fuel vehicles, nationalize the fossil fuel industry to phase them out. We propose to do this by means of a government buyout at fair value, fair to both owners and society. Nationalize the downstream fossil fuel industrial consumers of pipelines, refineries, distribution networks, on down to autos and aviation, airlines, shipping, petrochemicals, some manufacturing, some tourism, all those businesses whose business would be irreversibly based on fossil fuels and without which a government buyout, they'd be bankrupted. 5 minutes, you've got it. We propose to institute a federal public works administration type program to reemploy every worker in every fossil fuel affected industry, give them a new job at equivalent pay and benefits to exactly what they have right now in other useful but low emission work. Those workers in coal, oil, plastics, toxic chemicals, and so on deserve jobs. They just deserve better jobs than they have now. Thirdly, launch an emergency state-directed program to phase in renewable energy, electric generation, replace fossil fuel powered transportation with electric propulsion, discourage individually owned vehicles, encourage public transit, shared vehicles, bicycles, and other non-fossil fuel transportation. Okay? Fourthly, develop emergency plans to phase out wasteful, destructive, polluting industries from arms production to needless toxic chemicals and pharmaceuticals and so on, disposable industries and so forth. Okay? We can talk about why we propose buying them out, because some people think, well, these are capitalists who've already destroyed us. We should expropriate them, and I would for sure be for expropriating them, but we don't have decades to wage a class conflict we may not win. So it's easier for us to buy them out, and it's easy to tax them and have them pay for it themselves. I wrote an article called "An Eco-Socialist Path to Keeping Emissions Below 1.5 Degrees." If you Google that, you'll see, and there's a whole explanation about the financing of this. Okay, that brings me to AOC's Green New Deal. She is so amazing. Okay. AOC calls for, what I like about AOC's Green New Deal is that what is so impressive to me is that unlike all the mainstream approaches, AOC is not calling for any market solutions, no cap and trade, no carbon taxes. Instead, what she calls for is decarbonization of electric power generation, transportation, manufacturing, and construction, and so forth. To me, this seems like the idea of decarbonization is a self-radicalizing demand. Why? Because there's no way to decarbonize an economy based on endless growth, endless resource consumption, and thus inevitably endless pollution. The push for decarbonization is going to, is going to inevitably, in my mind, raise the question of nationalization, because how else can government enforce retrenchments and shutdowns we need to save the planet without precipitating economic collapse? What we want here is a smooth transition. We don't want a class war. What we want to do is buy people out, provide jobs for the workers that need them, and buy the capitalists out and tax them with their own money to pay for it. And this is quite feasible. So that's, I think, is the approach we want to do. But what she's proposing is a decarbonization, a massive affront of decarbonization will raise these issues about the need for nationalization, because there's no other way out of this. And her plan is a break with the, what I like also about, it's a break with the Reagan Thatcherite Friedman doctrine that capitalism good, government bad, because she's calling for an active government, for explicit planning, and for democratization of production. This is not yet certainly what they actually proposed to the Congress. It is not yet FDR's planning board. It doesn't have power to nationalize. It's not clear that they would even have the power to stop producing cars if they could even get this thing passed. But you have to, I think we have to see AOC's Green New Deal as a process, not a set of limited demands, but a process of continually radicalizing process that will take us to where we need to go. For sure, this seems wildly utopian at the moment, and it's going nowhere under the Republicans, but it won't seem so extreme in a few years when Western states are burning up and when Florida sinks and so forth. So there is no planet B. And let's hope that with developing a vision and mobilizing a monumental mobilization around this Green New Deal, that we can derail this dystopia and build an eco-socialist civilization to save the human race. Thank you.
You can see his entire speech at the website of Promoting Enduring Peace, or in our YouTubes at thestruggle.org. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller. Thanks for watching.